test, stay home from your jobs. I think this is going to also take any military and police officers that are listening and military soldiers listening. This is for you, that when this happens and we all start making this motion and doing this, setting these dates, that it's going to take the police and military walking away from their job too, because the only reason we are physically under control of the state is because the police officers and the military can hold weapons against us and hold us at gunpoint and use brute force to coerce us and assault and batter us into submission. So when we all turn our backs on the government, they're going to realize that the souls have stood up for themselves, and we're going to have to negotiate a deal. They're going to have to accept our promissory notes. We're not going to go back to work. Remember on 9/11, right after 9/11 happened and George Bush got on TV, and the New York, I remember because I'm a Yankees fan, and the New York Yankees hadn't played any games in about a week since all New York was shut down. And everything had come to a standstill, and everybody was waiting to find out what to do, and nobody was going to work. Everybody was kind of in a crisis. It was like weird. Everything shut down. George Bush got on TV and said, listen, just go on back to work. Go back to the ballpark. Let's come watch some New York Yankees baseball. Go back to your 9-to-5 jobs. Just forget about it. Don't worry. We'll take care of it. We just need to get you guys back to work. They would not want us shutting down their system. If everyone systematically said we quit, if the military and police turned in their uniforms and said, no, we're not supporting your tyranny anymore, if the lawyers and the judges and the people who run everything, us people doing all the work, just said, nah, yeah, we're done, we quit. And we just sit and we wait for them to say, listen, we can't survive the way you guys are doing this. You're treating us like slaves. You must accept our promissory note. You must stop brutalizing us. All these commercial crimes going on in the prisons, people are being held for. It's just a travesty on the planet and to the people.
Well, it goes
then
back.
We have to sit down and iron out the solution, but it can't go on the way it is anymore. We have to force their hands, and we have to bring it to a turning point where we make them have to sit down and respect us as souls and come to an agreement.
Now, tell everybody what happened to you about jail.
Yeah, when I went to jail with my conditional acceptance.
Yeah, why don't you tell the audience about that? How were you treated?
I was at the Augusta Mall handing out DVDs for my documentary, True Stories: A Lifetime of Alien Abductions, and a cop asked me for my ID because they wanted me to not be out there soliciting my stuff, because I was just talking to people at the mall and telling them about my documentary and giving them free DVDs to watch, because I want word to spread, because I think the government is involved in a genetic manipulation program, and they're putting memories in people's minds like they're being alien abducted, but I think it's a government program, and that's a different story. So I said to the officer, listen, I'm not going to tell you my name and I'm not giving you my ID because, according to the Fifth Amendment, I have the right to remain silent. I'm not going to incriminate myself by testifying against myself, and you cannot criminalize me invoking my Fifth Amendment right. So they handcuffed me and forced me into the back of a car, and they arrested me because they called it obstruction of justice, because I wouldn't tell them, because I had to invoke my Fifth Amendment right. So they broke the law right there, and I still wouldn't tell them my name. And then they handcuffed my wife, and they forced her, they scared her. They were like, ma'am, we're handcuffing you. They handcuffed her and said, we're taking you to jail too, and we're going to put you in a cell if you don't tell us his name. So she was afraid, so I was in the back of the car, and I said, listen, tell them my name. I don't want you to go to jail. You just tell them my name, because she was overwhelmed. She was like breaking down and sobbing, because that was her worst fear, would be going to jail. So they took me to jail, and they held me for like 5 days. I wouldn't tell them my name or my Social Security number, because my biometrics, I wouldn't let them take my fingerprints or a picture of me. And they kept coming into my cell every hour or so. And they put me into an ice-cold cell, and they took all my clothes from me and left me in shorts and a T-shirt and barefoot most of the time in a cold cell. And finally they gave me these little slippers, little plastic slippers. And they would not let me talk to an attorney or my wife until I gave them my picture and fingerprints. And I kept telling them, no, you cannot have my picture and fingerprints. I'm not going to give them to you. They're my biometrics. I do not consent to this. I want to speak to an attorney, and I want to speak to my wife. and you can't hold me here like this. I didn't do anything wrong. I have the right to remain silent. And they just kept slamming the door in my face. And they kept saying the same thing to me over and over again. Are you ready to have your picture and fingerprints taken? Not can we take your picture and fingerprints, but are you ready? Because if they were to ask me the truth, can we take your picture and fingerprints, and I say no, that's the end of the deal. But if I wasn't answering them with yes, I'm ready to have them taken, they were slamming the door in my face. Because they have to trick you into agreeing to let them take your picture and fingerprints so they can use them against you as your biometrics and put you into their courtroom, and we can talk about what the whole courtroom is. But so for 5 days I said no, no, no. So finally the captain came in there of the facility, Captain William H. Reeves of the facility, the Charles B. Webster Detention Center in Augusta, Georgia, which is where I was being held. And Charles B. Reeves, the captain, came in and he said, William H. Reeves, he came in and said, why won't you let let them take your picture and fingerprints? Why are you giving my guys a hard time? And I told him, because they're my picture and fingerprints and they belong to me, and I'm not going to let you use them against me. I said, I'll tell you what, because I figured in my head this is going to cost me a couple $1,000s in legal fees or fines or whatever. I said, you can have my picture and fingerprints for $2,500, but you got to pay me in cash right now. And if you don't pay me right now, it's another $2,500 per minute until I am paid. So he immediately turned around and walked out. And for another 36 hours, another day and a half, I was in that cell, and they kept doing the same thing. Are you ready to have your picture and fingerprints taken? And I kept saying, yeah, for the money that you owe me, you guys now owe me $100,000. It's been like this many hours at $2,500 a minute. And I didn't sleep for 5 days. They wouldn't really feed me. They wouldn't let me see a doctor, and I couldn't sleep because I had no way to lay down. I was in a cement room, and if I laid down, I would just get hypothermia. And I was taking these, they would give me cookies and Wonder Bread, and I would use the bag that the food came in, and I would fill it with hot water from the sink, and I would put it on top of my head and on my neck because my body temperature was dropping, and they wouldn't let me see a nurse. So finally, 36 hours after the captain walked away from my conditional acceptance on on my offer, I said, yeah, let's go. Let's take my picture and fingerprints, And as we were walking there, I was saying, but you guys owe me for this. This is all part of the deal. So they took my picture and fingerprints, and then they put me into the general population, into a big holding area, and I had a court date set up for a couple of days later where I was going to plea, and I was supposed to plea like an animal in front of them for what they wanted to do for obstruction, and they were going to call it trespassing. But people don't really realize that you can't really trespass out in the state, because all of the land in the state is owned by the state. Where you're really trespassing, if anyone's ever been charged with trespassing in court, is you're trespassing in the court, because that court is really a ship, dry dock in your state. So when you step off of the street and you step into the courtroom, you're going from your state or your country into this foreign vessel that's dry docked, and so you're trespassing on their vessel. But people don't really understand that because they don't really teach the truth about the law in schools. So I went into the courtroom, and I had been rehearsing in my head what I was going to say. I've been studying the law for a number of years, and I had been reading a lot about what the real situation was with magistrate court, with no court reporter in there, being a inferior court. And I was going to immediately open up a superior court. So I went into the courtroom. They dragged me in, handcuffed me. I hadn't shaved. I hadn't really slept in like more than 5 days. I hadn't eaten anything because I couldn't. Their food was just toxic sugar junk that I don't eat that stuff. Meat, deli meat, Wonder Bread, and a bottle of sugar water that they call like apple drink. So I went in there, and I was the last person they called that day with like the 13 other inmates or prisoners that they hauled in there. And I stood up, and they said, "Do you understand the charges being filed against you?" And I said, "No, I do not understand." And the Superior Court of the State of Georgia is now open to end in session, and it is my wish that you remove these chains from me and release me immediately. So when you make a wish, and I worded this specifically, I made a wish, which was a command to that judge, and that judge is wearing a black robe, mourning justice, and is sitting up in a box off of the level playing field. So you're in just this commercial corporate ship that has landed in your state, and they're just committing fraud and getting you to agree to their legal tactics so they can take money, Federal Reserve notes from you. But I didn't do that. I opened up a superior court. So the judge basically fled the courtroom. When I did that, she immediately stopped the case from progressing any further. She ordered me to have a public defender and psychiatric evaluation. So they took me back to and as I was leaving the courtroom, I told the prosecutor, I said, the judge disobeyed my orders just now. She's no longer honorable. She's in dishonor, and she should be arrested for violating a direct order. And she's also working for the same entity that's filing charges. You guys are prosecuting me. She's working for the state. How can I get a fair trial if the same person who's supposed to be impartial, this judge, is working for the entity that's prosecuting me? And the prosecutor said, yeah, I often wondered the same thing myself. And then he turned and walked away. And so I was brought back to the detention facility and put into the psych ward for like 2 or 3 days. And I was never given a psychiatric evaluation. And so they gave me a public defender who came and saw me. His name was last name is Stuckey. I can't remember his first name. And he's pretty much a cold-blooded snake. And he basically told me that I could not win. That, listen, you might be in the right in the things that you're saying and doing, but you're an army against one against a whole system that's against you, and they will put you away in that jail, and you'll never be heard from again. You just need to sign your plea deal and stop talking this rhetoric. And your wife is really worried, and she wants you to just do what I tell you so you can get out of jail and go home. So I went back to court, and I realized that they were railroading me, and the public defender, Stuckey, kept telling me I was crazy. And I told him, listen, man, you need to stop saying that because, first of all, you're not a psychiatrist, you're not medically trained, and you have no reason or right to evaluate me at all in that way, so stop even speaking to me that way. And he said, well, I still think you should seek some psychiatric help. So there was no talking to this guy. He even told me while he was interviewing me that he was a fascist, and the more people in jail, the better, and that he's into Marxism, and he loves the whole system that he's supporting. I mean, the guy was truly ruthless. So
Scary.
I went into the courtroom. Yeah, and they charged me with trespassing and obstruction of justice, and they fined me $100 for each and gave me a year probation for each. And so because we were not on the record there, I called the probation office and I mailed them I mailed them a $200 promissory note that they dishonored, and I also told them that the judge told me that I didn't have probation, that I didn't have to go in their office, and that was all hearsay, and that they can't prove otherwise. And that's true because there's no court stenographer in there. So they couldn't do anything. So I never had to go to the probation office, and I never had to satisfy probation. And I forced them to send me a letter saying that. So I got the letter clearing me of everything, and they wouldn't accept my promissory notes. So they're in dishonor. So I wound up sending them like $400 in cash because my wife was like, listen, if you don't just get this over with, it's just going to haunt you, and they're going to keep tacking on fines. You'll wind up back in jail. So I said, all right, fine. Let me just end this. Because I know that as one person, I can't really win this battle. I need 100,000 people to get on board and say, hey, I heard your show on Gary's show. Email me the promissory notes. Email me the path to freedom, and I want to be involved in this. And
well, okay. Now, before we go any farther, give where they can contact you.
Okay, you can find me on Facebook at Ronald.Farnham, and I'm always posting stuff, and you always post on your Facebook page, so they can find me on there, Ronald.Farnham, and Farnham, they can find the name of my name on your show, on your link. And then you can email me at farnham.ronald@gmail.com. And so if you message me on Facebook, I can send you all the attachments through Facebook, or if you email me, I can send it to you that way. And I know a lot of you people out there, and I want to do this for your audience, Gary, because I've been doing this, and I like to give, because I feel like everybody's got a story, and I want to be able to help